Hello everyone, you are watching or listening to Shabbat podcast. This episode is special because it's going to be in English as the podcast is trilingual, and our guest today is Laura Vaigorova, CEO and founder of college counseling platform SmarTestPrep. Thank you very much, Laura, for having time to make this episode.
Thank you, too. Thank you for having me. Thanks for this great idea of starting a podcast. I think a lot of other students, not only from the NIS, but also from other schools, are going to be listening to you, learning from you. So that's a really, really great idea.
Thank you so much. So you 1 month ago approximately came from America, the Silicon Valley Acceleration Program, Heroes Training. I'd like you to talk about it more. What were your first impressions after arriving here? Maybe you'll talk about it.
Sure. The program itself was amazing. Of course, in the beginning, I didn't quite like it because my first impression wasn't the best one. I was expecting something different. When we arrived, it was early in the morning. We landed in San Francisco. Then we drove to San Mateo, where the program was based. It was cool. I was just expecting something different. And I think because of the fact that I was, living by myself, with my husband, it was just the two of us. Living in a dorm kind of, style was a little bit weird. So my first impression was like, are we going to live in the dorm? Because the building, it's pretty, but it's old. It used to be an old hotel. So that was the only thing that I didn't, like in the beginning. I was like, okay, I need to adjust. We're going to be living all together in this dorm. Because we shared the first floor. We had a kitchen. We had a big hall for different events. We also had some co-working space in the first floor. And there were people there all the time. There were a lot of us in the program, like 100 people. So that kind of bothered me in the beginning too, because, you show up and there's a bunch of people doing something, noisy and loud. But then I think during the first couple of days, I kind of adjusted. I met a bunch of people because the participants were from all over the world, from over 40 countries. So that was great. And once our friendship started growing, once we started diving into the program, things kind of, got better because I realized that the program is not about the place, but about the experience. And it was amazing because we got to meet a lot of experts in the field, a lot of immigrant founders who, moved to the U.S. with zero funding, with nothing, and they started their companies from scratch. Although being immigrant founders, I think those were one of the most inspiring stories because it's not easy when you are a foreigner in the States and you're trying to build your business because people are going to be more skeptical. Investors and VCs, they still are more inclined to invest in locals. So that was pretty cool. We also met a bunch of rich people, like billionaires who are, 10 steps, 100 steps ahead of you. That was really interesting to listen to them. Even Tim Draper, the founder of this hero training program, Draper University. Of course, he comes from a family of generational wealth, but still, both him and his other siblings, his daughter, his son, are quite smart. So you need to be intelligent enough. You need to be agile enough to manage that kind of wealth and to manage, not to lose it. So that was really, really cool. Another thing that I liked is that there were no boundaries. In a good sense. Because sometimes when you want to reach out to someone, like in our region, like in the CIS, not necessarily in Kazakhstan only, but also in other countries, you get this elitarist approach, that you can't talk to me just because you want to talk to me, or I'm not gonna respond because, I'm this and that. There were no such things whatsoever during this program, because you wouldn't even know if the person is a founder who made a huge exit, or if it's a VC representative, or if it's an angel investor. Because people were just people, and they were happy to talk to you, share their stories, learn more about your background and your story. So that was really, really helpful.
So maybe you would talk more about who did you meet, like.
Well, a lot of different people. I mean, when it comes to the names of the companies, I'm not sure if, people listening to our podcast will recognize them, but there were a bunch of VCs, like Pear VC and other VCs that are internationally recognized, Global Silicon Valley Ventures, whom we met last year. So their representatives, we got to know each other a lot closer. We also had people who worked at Robinhood, like ex-co-founders. So a bunch of people who you talk about, with your friends, and you're just like, wow, they did great. They made this M&A, they made this exit. We also met with a bunch of people from Stanford MBA executive program, and those were people not only from the States but also from other countries. It was pretty cool because some of them were heads of large petroleum companies or train companies or whatever, like other businesses, like huge businesses. One of them was number one Forbes from Brazil, like the richest guy in Brazil. So yeah, we got to meet people like this and just to hear about their experience, about their stories. Yeah, that was cool.
I think that they have pretty different mindsets apart from their achievements. Yes. So, what have you noticed in their way of thinking? Maybe like your insights from meeting them.
I would say there were two different groups of people. I mean, by and large, of course, each person is unique and different. But from what I've noted, we can divide them into two separate groups. The first one is people who come from somewhat privileged background, because some of them are, because they're generationally like Stanford, Oxford educated, and they had some amount of wealth in the beginning. But I'm not making an excuse that, they were rich, that's why they succeeded. No, it's not like that. I'm just saying that they saw how their parents and their grandparents managed that wealth, how they built businesses, how they built network, how they built connections. And of course that played a role in their later success in life. So their mindset is pretty straightforward. They don't see the boundaries. They don't see the limits, because for them it's like a challenge, not even or even like a game, because they know that my dad succeeded. He did this and that, and I can do better. So that's what their mindset is like, and they're not struggling with what if I can't do this? Because they're like, okay, if I can't, I'm going to start over and I'm going to do something else. Another group of people, of course, is a group that is less privileged, mostly international founders, immigrant founders, or people who come from really, really poor families and households. So those, I think they struggled more. But again, I think this mindset of continuous failures let them succeed in the end. So this is something they have in common, that if I don't succeed, it's okay. I mean, there are so many other things that I can do afterwards, and if I don't succeed from the first time, I will try and try again until I finally succeed. So this is what I liked. And another thing that I like from immigrant founders is that they really are ruthless, but ruthless in a good sense, that they're not scared to put themselves out there and ask for help, to reach out to people. Even after like hundreds and thousands of no, they persevere, they keep doing what they're doing. I think that is something that help them succeed according to their stories.
So you mentioned that they are not scared of meeting new people. Do you have some advices on how to develop networking or how to meet new people and not be scared of that?
That's a really good question. Yeah, I mean, sounds obvious. You shouldn't be scared. You should just, go out there and talk to people. But I think you also need to be very, very curious in general. Like, you need to possess this intrinsic curiosity towards people and learning about them. Because sometimes when people do it and they do it intentionally, it seems very transactional. I mean, I meet it, a lot here in Kazakhstan and in the States as well, when a person is a little bit socially awkward and he is trying to approach you and you know that he wants something from you. So you don't want to make that kind of impression. So in order to avoid that, you really need to become generally curious about people's lives, about what they do, about what's great about them, and how you can be helpful. So I think the first thing you need to think about when networking with other people is not what you can get from them, but what you can give. Offer. Yeah, what you can give. And once you know what that thing is, your networking is going to go the other way around. For example, whenever I attend a networking event, I ask 4 or 5 major questions. I talk about myself, of course. Then I start talking about something, very common, as if we met before. Like, you see, the weather is really nice today. I really like the food at the event. So that I'm able to establish this warm connection with the person I'm talking to. Otherwise, it's hundreds of, my name's Laura, how are you? What brings you here? So I usually kick off our conversation from something, common, just to establish this connection. Then I talk about myself so that the person knows whom they're talking to. I ask what brings them here, whether they're liking it here or not. Sometimes people at the events, they think that I'm the host because I'm asking a bunch of questions about the event, how is everything here, whether the person likes it or not. And that's cool because that shows that I'm interested. Once I'm done with that, I ask a person how I can be helpful, how I can be of help, I don't know, network-wise, I don't know, with anything basically. And then of course the person is more willing to open up, share his, contacts, his help. So that's my strategy, and I think you should be thinking of that in the first place when networking with someone. You shouldn't act transactional. You shouldn't, be intrinsically be transactional, and you should be aware that that person on the other end also deserves something from you. So if you offer that, then I think it's a perfect network.
Thank you so much for your advices. So I see that life in USA was quite busy and interesting, and it makes me want to turn backwards and ask you about your university life. So you had a pretty busy life in university, engaging in different clubs, having numerous activities. How did you manage your time? And didn't you feel like you have so many work, so many activities, and you can't manage all of them at once?
Of course I had that feeling. Looking back at my college life, I was super active. I was a hyperactive student, and my time management wasn't the best at the time, because sometimes I felt so overwhelmed that I couldn't get up. I would spend days in bed, normally 2-3 days. I would skip classes, I would skip my practice, I would skip everything, I would skip work, because for me it was like a rat race. Sounds bad, but it was what it was. I would just work every day. I would attend classes, do my homework, go to like volleyball practice, other, club things. I was also president of the Spanish club. So I would normally sleep for like 5-6 hours, and the rest I would just be doing something. I also hanged out with friends a lot, 2-3 times a week. So that was super crazy. And then I would just burn out, stay in bed for a couple of days. But that's how it was, really. I think towards my 3rd year, I finally came to realize that that's not the way to live, that I should really organize my schedule. So I cut off some of the things from it, mostly parties with my friends. But that was not the wisest decision, because towards the end of my junior year, I realized that that's the only memories I will, keep once I graduate. But anyways, that's what I did. I started going to bed at like 10 and waking up at 6 a.m. And that schedule worked really, really well for me, but it didn't include my friends or any, birthdays or parties. So I experimented a lot, and then I just developed, a strategy that allowed me to be a low effort everything. I mean, I still use the strategy, like I'm a low effort blogger, I'm a low effort activist, I was a low effort student. So I realized that I didn't need a perfect GPA. A-, that's okay. So whenever like I reach this point that I have enough percent to get an A-, I wouldn't show up to class, or I wouldn't write any tests or exams or whatever. And when my professors asked, they were like, you didn't show up to that quiz because, it's 5%. And I was like, it's only 5%. I already have enough to get an A- in your class, so I don't really care. I will not show up. So that's what I did basically with everything. I only showed up for the important things that influenced the outcomes of whatever I was doing. Yeah, the same applied to like Spanish club. Like I delegated a lot of things, and I was only doing the things that no one else could do but me, and the rest I just wouldn't do them.
So you've mentioned like sometimes doing less effort to manage the tasks you have, but sometimes people have like a perfectionism that drains the energy, and you pay too much attention to minor details. So how to solve the problem of perfectionism, or is it okay?
I think it's okay. I used to be a very, very strong perfectionist back in the day during my first year at school and in high school. But I think this realization of what's important and what's not, because at the end of sometimes the outcomes matters more than what was done before. Of course, not always, but when it comes to technicalities like hosting an event, it doesn't matter if you had like 100 meetings before the event, or if you had 10 meetings before the event. The only thing that matters is the fact that you hosted it well. Nobody noticed that you didn't have those 100 meetings that you wanted to have, right? The same applies to your grades. It doesn't matter if you get an A- or an A. Like nobody cares. As long as you get what you want, as long as you attain that knowledge that you wanted to get, that's all that matters. And for me, I think another helpful like realization was when I started working. I mean, this is the business that I'm doing now. This is what I do for a living. But before, I experimented a lot with my friends. So I was working as a tutor. I was working for a year and a half at the University Writing Center. I was working as an interpreter and translator, both simultaneous and consecutive. I also took a bunch of courses on simultaneous interpretation. So I'm certified in that. I worked as an interpreter. I worked as a guide. I worked as a research assistant. And at some point, my friends and we started doing like a small business. So we ordered a bunch of things from Alibaba, I think. Oh, yeah, some Chinese website. and we were just selling them at the university. Then we also started doing then we started building a marketplace. So I had some experience with business and also different kinds of jobs. And I realized that no matter how well you craft your plan, things never go as planned. So there is no point in being a perfectionist. Because really, when I was in high school, I always had a spare pair of headphones. Can you imagine that? A pair of, I don't know, glasses, whatever. I always carried something as a backup plan if I lose it or if someone needs it. And it never worked because my backpack was so heavy, like I couldn't carry it really. But I had this mindset that I always need to have a plan B, plan C, plan D. But sometimes they just don't work. No matter like how hard you work on them, no matter how well you craft them, life happens. External things happen and you're just unable to control them. You're unable to control everything. I think I also had this control issue because I wanted to control everything in my life, but so many things are not dependent on you. A lot of things, they just happen naturally. They just happen the way they happen, and that's all. Like COVID did. Nobody anticipated it, but it happened. It struck out of nowhere and we all had to stay home for half a year. So if you think about it, about your perfectionism from this perspective, you will, logically understand that there is no way you can anticipate everything. There is no way you can be perfect at all times. Of course, you can put in as much effort as you want to, but if it's not enough, that's okay. You should just be accepting of that because that's life. And it's better to put your energy elsewhere on something you might enjoy more or on something that is less draining, because you said that being a perfectionist is draining because you want to get that 100% and you get 99, you get upset. But you should really celebrate both failures and victories, and even small victories, and just think about it that anything can happen. You can't control it. So what's the point of being a perfectionist?
Thank you so much for your advices. They were quite eye-opening, I think. Now, maybe we'll talk about your work, the SmarTestPrep. What are the projects now? What are you planning to do?
So currently we are in the testing process of the new platform. So what does the platform include? We have a profile builder, basically a questionnaire that a person fills out in order to receive their personalized preparation plan for future college applications. And we also have a search engine. Once you've filled out this questionnaire, you can match your information with any universities or scholarships that you search. So basically you have an input, you have your own info, then you search for schools like some university in Munich, let's say. You choose it, and then the algorithm will show you the percentage chance of getting in that specific university, and it will change based on the university of your choice. So we did that in order to simplify the college list building process, because a lot of international students struggle with that, and they build their college list absolutely unwisely. They just pick random schools, like big name schools, and they never consider the fact that they might not be a good fit, or that they lack certain things, and there's either a time-bound problem or something related to their stats that they can't change, so it's best not to apply to that school. So we did that. Then we also did this personalized preparation plan builder, so that a student can see what they can improve in order to increase their chances of getting accepted. And once they see all of that, we of course offer them different prep courses that we have. So we have three parts of the platform. The first thing is the search engine, this questionnaire that assesses your chances. We also have a learning management system where you can see all of our courses, you can watch videos, you can do homeworks, you can basically learn like how to write essays, how to, score 1500 on your SAT. And we also have, like a bonus, we have this writing blog where you can insert your essays and receive immediate feedback. And the third part is the testing part. So we have a platform that allows us to test students. So you can take proctored tests for the SAT, the ACT, different kinds of tests, and you can get like personalized feedback as well. Which topics you did well, which topics you didn't quite know. So these are the 3 parts that we're working on right now. We also have a course for college counselors, because in the future we plan to integrate with different schools and organizations and allow their counselors use our platform and our content in order to teach students and help them with their application processes. And on the other end, we're also partnering with universities, because there is a huge pool of students. There is a big influx of students that goes through the platform. So we want to partner with universities on the other end in order to provide, bonuses, scholarships, potential discounts to the students that we have on the platform.
I saw the post you posted in Instagram about one Indonesian boy that he has so many achievements, and he says that he is still not ready to get into universities. He's in 8th grade. Yeah. So what do you think is the biggest problem our Kazakh students have? Like maybe they have lack of extracurriculars, or what's the most important problem, which always is the pivot from getting to Ivy League universities?
That's a great question. I'm afraid I can't come up with one, sole problem that prevents our students from getting in. But if we talk about a general, like, public high school, let's take, I don't know, school number 66 in Astana as an example. Kids who go to that school, they're raised by normal parents from upper middle economic class, probably. Not rich, not poor, somewhere in between. Those parents, I'm just guessing, but most of them have never studied overseas. Maybe they have been overseas, but they're not so well traveled compared to other people. And they know nothing about foreign education system. Not only the American one, not only the Ivy League, but also other, like, big name schools like China, Singapore, other places have great schools as well. So that's something that prevents kids in the first place. Because if the school doesn't educate them on the topic, if the parents don't educate them on the topic, they either remain uneducated or they start learning about those opportunities, but later in life, when it's kind of too late. Because if you read that post, you really need to be so smart, so well-rounded at an international level that you are able to get in. Or you have to be a professional athlete. That's one way. But you also need to be a straight-A student. So the first thing that prevents us, by and large, from getting in is awareness. So parents are not aware, schools are not aware. Even when it comes to Kazakhstani educational systems, I have friends whose siblings, for example, were applying to schools in Kazakhstan this year. And once they got done with their UNTs, they didn't know how to apply. They didn't even take the time to Google it and see how to apply to local universities. So they were waiting on their parents to do it. And their parents weren't willing to do it because they didn't know either. They almost missed the deadline, for the application. And it's within the country. Imagine how different the situation is with foreign universities. Mm-hmm. Because people are unwilling to research it. It's hard for them. And so my vision is that if kids and parents as well were educated about the whole process, how difficult it is, how competitive it is, and what needs done in order to raise a child that is eligible for that kind of big name school, they might have done things differently. I'm not sure. But the thing is, if it's not there, if it's not in the educational system, kids will never know. Because again, it's only the privileged schools. So this is number one issue. And number two, I would say, how do I put it correctly so that I don't offend anyone? Getting by. I think getting by cheating, getting by deceiving, because I think it still exists. And because of that, both parents and kids, when they come to grade 10, let's say, they still have this thinking that if we can, buy a test certificate or we can pay someone, will that make our application process easier for us? So that mindset, I think it needs to go away. If first they have this awareness that this is real, but this is really difficult, and it requires a lot of hard work. And then the second thing, that they don't have even the tiniest thought of, cheating or deceiving or doing something that will allow them, or, this nepotism, that there's someone at Harvard who can vouch for me, whatever. If these two things go away, maybe things are going to get better. I don't know.
So I think we should raise awareness and educate.
Raise awareness, and not in a sense that, this guy from Kazlarda got into Harvard. Because that's what the news do. They never show how many years that guy spent on, college counseling courses, on learning, on training, on doing everything in order to get in. They never show that. They just show that it's so easy to get a grant in America. But they never say that there is no such a thing as a grant per se. Yeah, you can get a scholarship, you can get a stipend, you can get a discount, but there is no grants. And there is no easy way into that, a school of that kind of level. So if they did that, maybe more people realize how difficult it is and they need prep. But news, especially here, they like advertising everything through pink glasses that, getting there is easy, or 3 ways of learning a language in 3 days. That's why it doesn't work.
So I think we're coming to an end. Lastly, could you please talk about what inspires you? It's the last question, like Shabbat podcast, and what inspires you? Who inspires you?
Well, that's a great question. I think a lot of things inspire me. People who stand by their word. People who fail and fail and fail and fail until they succeed. People who persevere, I would say, no matter the struggles their life brings. Because I know a lot of people who've gone through a major trauma. I have friends from the Marine Corps who went to war, literally to war, and they saw terrible things, but that didn't make them less humane, that didn't make them less willing to live this life and do something interesting with it. So those kinds of stories, they inspire me a lot. And also this idea of making changes. I think that's an inner inspiration, that I can change something for at least my close circle of friends and people, for my family. I can change something for my own self. I can change something for some kid, living in the outskirts of Astana or elsewhere. And of course, young people like yourself. I'm always happy to see when I mean, nearly teenagers, kids like you, they start doing things that some adults never think about. And that's great. That gives me hope that the future is actually going to be bright and everything we're doing is not for nothing.
Thank you so much for such an inspiring conversation with you. I wish you prosperity, following and achieving your dreams, goals. Thank you again.
Thank you too, Aloha. Good luck with your podcast and everything you do. I'm sure whatever you do, will do it well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you too.
So have a nice day.
You too.
Thank you so much for listening. Subscribe to our podcast. Subscribe to Laura's Instagram, TikTok. So goodbye, everyone. Thank you again.